Contrary to popular belief, growing a business is not the be-all and end-all it's cracked up to be, but scaling a business. Now, that is a whole different story. In this episode of Power Presence Position, episode number 437, we are exploring the difference between growth and scaling and why it matters so very much. Stay tuned. So here's the question. In a world where the rules of business have been written by men, how do women entrepreneurs like us, women who want to make millions of dollars and impact millions of lives, how do we create enormous success on our terms? That's the question, and this show explores the answers. Welcome to Power Presence Position. I'm your host, Eleanor Beaton, and I'm on a mission to double the number of women entrepreneurs who generate over $1 million per year in annual revenue. I'm an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and leadership coach. I'm a wife, mom of 2 boys, and I'm the CEO of a 7-figure business. Stick around because on this show, you'll learn how to think, communicate, and get paid like a 7-figure CEO. Let's go. Hello, my fierce friend. Welcome back to another episode of Power Presence Position. This is our second episode of 2021, the first actually new podcast episode I've recorded in 2021. Oh my goodness. Dudes, we made it. Oh my gosh, we made it through 2020. Wow. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to sum it up like this. 2020 was not the year I wanted, but it was the year I needed. Like, I can't even tell you the amount of growth that I experienced as a leader, that our company experienced. And it's so interesting because, when you look at stages of business growth, and I know this, like I coach people through this and I also experience it myself. When you look at stages of business development, there are really important thresholds that companies need to cross in order to hit that next level. And that's what we did this year. And it was tough. Oh my goodness, tough. It was rewarding. It was stressful. And it was a complete reset. So anyway, one day you and I can have a glass of wine and talk it over, but super fun. It'll be in my memoirs. Don't worry about it. It'll be in my memoirs. So let's talk about the difference between growth and scaling. And I, occasionally use the terms interchangeably, but what drives me crazy is when people use scaling and they don't know what they're talking about. They're completely using the term wrong. And these two words are very different. It's a little bit like, I'll be honest, I am a word snob. So I'm just going to own that. And you know what? I love that about myself. So when people say antidote, which is like a cure, when what they really mean to say is the word anecdote, which is a story, the internal eye rolling that's happening. And I mean, I'm not going to say anything. I am going to, I just notice it. I'm that kind of word person. So when people confuse growth and scaling, that really annoys me too. And yes, we do use the words interchangeably, but when you are talking about scaling, but really all you're doing is growing, I feel as though that contributes to a lot of confusion and heartache and stress in the entrepreneurial world. And you're going to see exactly why I'm saying this here in a moment. So to kick it off, of course, I'm going to start with a story because here's the central idea. Scaling sets you free. Growth produces more headaches. Okay? Scaling sets you free. Growth produces more headaches. So let me give you an example. Years ago, as you know, when I was a little girl, no, just kidding. So years ago, I was a business journalist. And honestly, it was probably the most powerful training ground I could have for entrepreneurship and coaching. Because when I combine the hours and hours, like hundreds, maybe even thousands of hours of interviews that I did with CEOs and founders of some of the fastest growing companies in North America, and kind of combined that with my background in economics, with my coaching certification, those three things come together. And it has just been so useful in the coaching work that I do with women entrepreneurs. So I remember this guy, his name was Phil. I was interviewing him, and this was just while his company was growing like crazy. I mean, it was like over 1,000%. And keep in mind, if I was interviewing them, it was because they were experiencing explosive growth. Whether or not that was actually scaling was yet to be determined. And often I would have the chance to kind of go through their balance sheets and check it out, or their income statements and check it out, their financials. But anywho, so I'm talking to Phil, and he has a company that it was kind of like a property development company. And the company has been growing at like 4-digit percentage, like 1,000+% year over year for like 2 or 3 years. And so I go and talk to him, and he was sort of a very gruff, analytical guy to begin with. And, you know, most of these interviews would be with guys, and it was pretty funny. So I really got used to getting guys to talk. And I would notice that if you went for a drive or you went for a walk or you did something, these CEOs would talk. So I'd always be asking, can you give me a tour of this? Can you know, we were trying to do something, and that would get them talking. And then I'd always get better stuff from my articles. Anyway, I digress. That's just a little tip for all of y'all who may or may not be interested in how do we get gruff guys talking. So Phil, founder of this company, it's growing at 1,000+%. And it was really excited. I was excited for him. And I was like, how does it feel? And he's basically gave me some sort of paraphrased version of, look, it's just some extra zeros and extra problems. And you could tell the guy seemed really tired. He had a ton on his mind. You know, it was like, I've got 99 problems, and this interview is not one of them. He just had a lot going on, and he was exhausted, and there was a lot of heaviness. And that's because he was experiencing growth, but not necessarily scale. So the company was growing and growing and growing, but proportionate to the growth in revenue was the growth in inputs required to produce that revenue. Team members, assets, supplies. You know, so as he made more money, the business itself was becoming more expensive and costly and complex. And that was, you could see it. It was on his face. He wasn't excited about it. He was stressed about it. And you could just feel that coming off him. And I will be honest, in the interviews that I did over the years that I was covering some of the fastest growing companies in this country, so often I would hear about, you know, significant and massive stress levels that these founders, typically men, were experiencing as they were growing the companies. There was just tremendous amounts of stress, massive cash flow shortages. It was just painful, okay? At around the same time, I can remember speaking with a woman who owned a very successful physiotherapy type of business, like a chain of clinics in another part of the country. And she had significantly downsized and scaled back. And she was like, my philosophy now, after all of those headaches that I had, the same kind of headaches that this guy Phil had been going through, she's like, after going through my having bellyache of that, my philosophy is keep it small, keep it all. So I can remember being a young woman, you know, thinking about these two stories. So Phil, who's having massive growth in revenue, but also massive growth in complexity, massive growth in costs. And then the lady who was like, I've had a belly full of that, so I'm going to keep it small and keep it all. Now, keep in mind, everybody makes their own choices. And both of these, I mean, these were ballers, right? So both of these people were making empowered choices, I believe. I have no reason to believe otherwise, about how they were going to run their businesses and live their lives. But personally, I didn't like either of those two things. I did not want to experience growth and just be like, oh, it's more zeros and more headaches. And I sure as hell didn't want to look like he did, like stressed and unhealthy. And on the other hand, I really did not want to be like, stay small, keep it all. That is just contrary to everything I stand for in a human. I believe I'm constitutionally unable to do that. Even saying it is painful to me. Now, some of you are like, but I'm a stay small, keep it all person. And I'm like, bully for you. As in, that is amazing. There is no judgment here, queen. But for me, myself, I knew that neither one of those extremes was something that I wanted. And I know that, you may be the person listening who are in the same boat as me. You want Phil's money, but you want the lady's lack of headaches, right? You want both. You want simplicity, but you also want the rewards. And what I want to share with you is that number one, it's totally possible. It is eminently possible. And it has a lot to do with how we define growth and how we define that end game. And, I think this comes down to being supremely intentional about what you are creating. And so often when I'm coaching clients, when I'm working with you, what I notice is that it's easy for you to underestimate the amount of authorship that you have in your results right now, and also in the future that you're creating. So, and I think keeping this, like really knowing what that is. So I need to say right now, I am working on a piece of work, which is really a model for growth. A model for growth because I think this problem of looking out into the world and really not seeing a model of growth that reflects what we want, this is rampant for so many women entrepreneurs. And I think it's why very often they can feel a little conflicted about growth and about putting in the work to grow. So yeah, that's just kind of something I've been thinking about. But anyway, this is something I'm working on. And can I just be humble but not modest for a moment? I honestly think that this model of growth will be as impactful for the vast majority of female founders as Good to Great was for big businesses, truly. Anyway, so I'm super excited, and that's what I'm doing with my free time. But anyway, the simple way to say it is that in my work with thousands of women entrepreneurs over the last, honestly, 8 years, decade, what I know is that I have yet to meet a woman who didn't truly define success in some way that include these three things: cash, influence, and autonomy. So cash, meaning cash flow, meaning profit, and meaning growing revenues. Those three things, right? The ability to have cash flow, profit, and rising revenue. Influence, meaning recognition for your work. Relationships that are inspiring and can really catalyze more growth, and respect for your ideas. The ability, like if you want to advance an idea or make change, you've got the influence to be able to do it. And then finally, autonomy. And autonomy is freedom. And I really see that for so many founders and women entrepreneurs and leaders, you get autonomy when you have a business that is simple to run, that does not require all of your time and life force to grow it. And when that happens, you actually want to grow it. Think about it. Why would you want to grow something that sucks the life out of you, right? Why would you ever want to do that? Like, that is why from an evolutionary perspective, that's why babies are so cute. Because let's be honest, they're amazing, but dang, you don't sleep. They're drinking the calcium out of your bones. Like, come on, right? I mean, I love being a mother, but this is true. But they're so cute. They're so dang meaningful. So you want to, quote unquote, grow them most of the time. Like, you want to raise them the majority of the time. If you didn't, we wouldn't, right? We just wouldn't. There's lots of animals in the animal kingdom that eat their young. Okay, wow. Yes, I did just say that. I did totally just say that. That was a little bit of a lapse, but come on, it's true. My point is, we only grow the things we want to grow. So if you don't want to grow it, if it adds more headaches, of course you're going to feel conflicted about growth. So let's talk then about the difference. So if women want cash, influence, and autonomy, let's take a look at what traditional growth models are about. Your company's revenue, you sell more, and so you start making more money. Top line, that's revenue. We call that top line. So in a growth scenario, the more you grow, now you've got to hire more people to fulfill that growth. Growth is the ultimate cash sucker if you haven't designed your growth properly. So unintentional growth, like often growth sucks cash because you need more team members, you need more resources. Just think about Phil. This is super, super stressful. It's complex because if you haven't designed it in an intelligent way, not only do you grow your revenue, but you grow your complexity and headaches as well. And I have yet to see a business who hasn't invested, where the founder has not invested significant amounts of her time and intention in a very intentional and carefully designed growth model, such that she can grow the revenues of her company without growing the complexity. That doesn't generally happen by accident. It happens through intelligent design. Okay. So if you're in this situation, you can reverse it. You can change it through injecting more simplicity. But that's what growth is, right? Everything grows. That's the Phil situation, the story that I kicked off at the top of the call. Extra zeros, more problems. Now, P.S., it's not just in making widgets or property development or that kind of thing. I see this all the time in consulting, like straight up consulting, which is why I got out of consulting. And it's why I will very often encourage my clients to transition away from straight up consulting or figure out ways to simplify that process of service delivery, no matter what kind of service delivery you're doing, some form of design, consulting, that kind of thing, where you're providing boutique and done for you, really putting the time and intention into making sure that is scalable, typically through system, right? Because if you don't do this work, you just make more headaches for yourself, right? And it becomes very costly. So, on the other hand, scale is where your revenues are growing faster than your expenses. Your revenues are growing faster than your expenses. What does that create? Ladies, that creates margin. And margin equals freedom. So when you're scaling, and this typically does not happen, I have yet to see this happen without the founder having intentionally designed her business this way. So when you have scale, you typically are going to have good cash flow. And the good cash flow enables you to do one of two things. Number one, build the right team to help you. Not just anyone will do, trust me. You've got to build the right team, the correct team with the correct mindset and the correct skill set, and just the right fit. So building the right team to help. Very often you'll be investing in some form of technology and processes, but scale sets you free. Growth creates more problems. Scale sets you free. And so what we're really looking for is scale. So growth very often does happen organically. It does happen naturally. Scale almost never does. Scale happens through intentional design. And it happens through being focused, right? So this is so interesting. I was thinking about how my personal planning, business planning has evolved. And when I started my first business, it was a consulting business, years and years ago. I would set revenue goals and then just hustle to meet them, and I always met them and that was all good. But that experience, I didn't want it anymore. I didn't set up my business for scale. My business right now is very much is designed for scale, right? Very, very much so. And that has come through decisions, choices, focus, all of that kind of thing to make sure that the business is set up for scale. So here are some rules for scale that I think are going to be helpful for you, or principles of scale. So the first thing is you don't really work your way out of overwhelm. You typically are going to simplify your way out of overwhelm. So if you're overwhelmed in your business right now, working through it or growing through it, that isn't really going to be a solution. Typically, it's going to be about some discernment and about really taking a look at things and simplifying, right? So you don't work your way out of overwhelm, you simplify your way out of overwhelm. That means that you as the founder have to have very clear thinking. Your ability to think clearly is of such paramount importance, because that is from that place that you start gently, surgically cutting, releasing, tearing away the chaff and revealing, what truly matters and what will truly produce results in the company. So that's number one. Okay. You don't work your way out of overwhelm. You simplify your way out of it. And a simple business is much easier to scale. Number two, don't commit the mistake. This is the classic entrepreneurial mistake of overestimating what can get done in a day, but underestimating what can get done in a year. What I find is that entrepreneurs' impatience is typically one of the biggest things that's harming their growth, because the impatience and just the angst and the fear and the scarcity mindset drives you to take so much on, to feel like you need to do everything and be everywhere, to do a lot of things kind of half-assed, let's be honest, where, it's like a much haste, less speed kind of situation, really slowing things down, being discerning, and doing a few things well, and really applying that focus and discipline is going to produce the kind of business that truly sets you free. And this takes me to rule of scale number 3, that scale requires the belief that our business is a tool to set us free. This is fascinating. I realized this in myself several years ago, that my addiction, I was such a workaholic. I loved work so much that I would basically perpetuate complexity because I loved working so much. And I realized that, I really needed to continue to ask myself and be very much connected to what's my deeper mission here. And so I started making changes. And this is so interesting because I would say that as of right now, recording, about 1/3 of my time is completely open time. So not just 1/3 of my working days, 1/3 of my life is open for me to use the way that I want to use that time. And as soon as that happened, that's when I became completely reoriented around mission. And I've always been mission driven, but now I had the time, the space, and the resources to be able to advance my mission. Now, I'm not Oprah, right? I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that it is possible for every small business owner out there to really advance your industry if that's what your mission is. Or to maybe you have a very personal mission, or maybe you have a very faith-based mission. Aren't you here for that? Isn't that why you're here? And so if that's why you're here, don't you need time to be able to do that? And, don't allow workaholism or having an overly complex business take you away from your larger mission. And it can easily do that in a workaholic culture. So that's kind of the third sort of rule of scale. Now, to wrap this up, what I will say is that the simpler and simpler you make your business, the more clear, confident, purposeful, and well-directioned you will be. The simpler you make your company, the more profitable and the easier it will be for you to scale that company. And there's such a powerful link between the courage to simplify and your entrepreneurial confidence. And another way to think about entrepreneurial confidence is how I call it ridiculously bold, astoundingly brazen. That's the level of confidence that I want you to have in 2021. So if you would like to join me for a masterclass, this is the only masterclass of this kind I'll be doing this quarter, go to eleanorbeaton.com/bold. eleanorbeaton.com/bold. And in it, I'm talking about how to be ridiculously bold and astoundingly brazen, and how this shows up in your sort of leadership and marketing voice. But it's not just marketing voice, right? Because we're a comprehensive whole person. It's how you show up in every aspect of your life. This is so interesting. I have noticed, I had a really interesting conversation the other day with somebody who knows me in a completely different environment, an environment that's extremely buttoned up by nature. And what is so interesting is the more that I personally unleash my own brand of ridiculously bold and astoundingly brazen through marketing and podcasting and videos and all of that kind of thing, the more that it informs everything I do. It's how I show up everywhere. And I find that I am continuing to create much more intentionally. And I'm sharing this with you because, number one, that's why you're here, to hear tips and strategies and insights that are going to help you. But at the end of the day, you weren't put on this earth. You were not put in this place just to make more money and just to, quote unquote, grow your business. You are here because you have a mission. And that mission might be to double the number of women entrepreneurs globally, like mine is, and in so doing, create a new model of economic growth and prosperity. Because P.S., the current model of growth and prosperity that we have is screwing over the planet. So we cannot sustain this. Something has to give. And who other than women entrepreneurs to drive that agenda, to be the beacons of light, to be the examples. We're just cutting edge, right? We're always the ones who are bringing home to our communities and families new ideas, new ways of doing things. Well, I think we need to share new ways of growth, right? That are sustainable for the planet. That's my mission. I don't know what your mission is, but I know you have one. And you weren't put on this earth just to grow your revenue so you could grow your freaking headaches. You were born to scale. And scaling a company doesn't mean being the next Facebook. You can scale a company where you are growing your revenues, but your expenses are not growing. You are building a stockpile of cash. You are directing that abundance to causes that matter to you. You have time to either spend with the people that you love or, write that mystery novel or advance your body of work. That's what you're here to do. And what I can tell you is the more you lean into the boldest, most brazen version of yourself, the more you intentionally create a life and an impact in a business that allows you to do that, the more able you are to really live that mission. So that's my wish for you this year. It's my wish for myself this year as well. Let's work on this together. And if you want to be in a live class with me, come to eleanorbeaton.com/bold. Ridiculously bold, astoundingly brazen. I mean, come on, just to even is that a great webinar name or what? That's basically my life. I just come up with cool things that I name to entertain you. So we'll see you at the class. Love you. Thank you for listening. Bye. If you love this show, then you will love even more my missives, i.e., my emails. If you're not on my email list yet, I strongly encourage you to sign up at eleanorbeaton.com/join. Now, when you go and sign up for my email list, you will quickly discover why some of the most popular, well-known, and influential voices in the world of women's entrepreneurship quietly, studiously, consistently open every single email I send out because they want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, and also I think they really want to connect with a woman like myself who's in full command of her voice and is willing to open up and share her thinking, her ideas, and her story. I promise you that on this email list, you are going to be entertained. You are going to hear really valuable tips about stepping into your power as a leader. And you're also going to get fun insight that I do not share anywhere else. Go to eleanorbeaton.com/join. And I promise you it will be the highlight of your inbox.